In this video, I want to address a few of the limitations that are inherent with thinking about injuries as a function of this SN curve. And the first one is pretty straightforward. It's that this SN curve is, we would say, the number of loading cycles to failure as a function of mechanical stress on average. And what I mean by that is, suppose you get some tendons from a bunch of cadavers and you test them, like meaning you put them in a machine and you load them over and over again at this level of stress, whatever that level of force divided by cross-section area is. And you plot how long it takes each of them to fail. Maybe one of them fails like here, the other one fails here, the other one here, 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 and you take the average, and then the average ends up being right here. It's important to keep in mind that there's this kind of like stochastic probabilistic distribution. So it's not like you instantly become injured when you go from here to here. A maybe better way to think about this is a line where the probability of injury becomes 50%. Or on average, equivalently, out of 100 people, on average they'll get injured at this number of loading cycles at some amount of stress. So that's one limitation, is that this is just an average and it's not like guaranteed. There's a random component of when a tissue fails. The other component, the other limitation that I want to talk about may have come to mind in the last video when we were talking about consuming proportions of your fatigue life. So let's say you go for a run and you take 10,000 steps on your run at a stress level that would lead to fatigue failure after, say, 150,000 steps. And maybe if you'll allow me, let me change that to 15,000 steps just to make the math easy. Now, according to our math, by doing that run, you have consumed 10% of your total fatigue life of, say this is the SN curve for your tibia. So hypothetically, you go running tomorrow, and now you're moved to here, the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day. 10 days later, you're here, and according to our math, you should have a stress fracture like, on that 10th day of running, because then you've consumed 10% times 10 days equals 100% of the fatigue life of that material. But if you take this to, and indeed that I should maybe note, this does happen. This is generally how people get injured. But you might have realized that according to this math, people will certainly get injured at some point during their career. And in fact, hypothetically they should hurt every tissue in their body, right? They should get injuries everywhere because you're always moving this direction. And this brings me to the limitation that is not addressed by this traditional SN curve, which is the idea of recovery. So say you go out and you do that run that consumes 10% of the fatigue life of your tibia. During recovery, somehow we know that number should go down, but we have almost no idea what that rate looks like. So how quickly does your body move backward or move that total fatigue life percentage down? We know that happens because there are many people who go running every day, who go walking every day, who go backpacking, who lift weights, who never get overuse injuries. So all I can say for now for how this works, because I really, if I knew how this works, I would tell you, and I'm keenly interested from a research perspective in what it is that brings that percentage of fatigue life down. But recovery, however planned out, certainly must decrease that. And that suggests, for example, if you need to take, say, 100,000 steps at some stress level, it's better to disperse them out further in time. So for example, if you had to run 100 miles, better to spread it out over 10 weeks instead of 1, right? But that's something that the SN curve does not address. It's a limitation that it doesn't address. So even though this is a very useful way of thinking about overuse injuries, it doesn't get us away from having to think about some of the things that we know from previous videos and previous weeks about the biological response of tendons to mechanical stress, the biological response of bones to mechanical stress. So we need to keep those things in mind also when you're, for example, planning programming to try to improve fitness without people getting hurt.